Hi, Sally Hodell, author of the Destin series. Today I'm bringing you a story of Elvis's generosity that has been rather unknown until now, until the research of Destin to Give, the legendary generosity of Elvis Presley, which is now available for pre-sale and will be fully available June 1st. I found this story while I was researching, and it has been talked about briefly in a couple of different places, as we'll discuss going forward. But the people on the receiving end of his intentional kindness and generosity during a very tragic situation have never been heard from. This is the first time that they've been heard from. And in the video ahead here, there will be a conversation between myself and Dottie, who is the daughter of the people who I'm going to tell you about. And she was so generous with her family story, and the connection came to mean so much to both of us, which you will hear throughout our conversation that is just ahead. But first, I thought I would read to you the news article, which is where it all started. I found this article in the Memphis Press Scimitar. It was published on July 25th, 1974. And this article just caught my attention. And, I collected thousands of articles during this research process. But this one, for some reason, was always at the top of the stack. And there were so many stories and people, that I was really curious about. But for some reason, this one just kept pulling me back, which, again, you'll hear more of in the conversation ahead. But I thought I would read the article to you just so you could see or hear, excuse me, what kind of led me on my journey to learn more. So here's the article. The headline is Car Hits Two in Family. Mother, Child Killed. A woman and her 2-year-old son were fatally injured earlier today when they were struck by a car while sightseeing at Elvis Presley's home in Whitehaven. Police said the child, Darren, of Stanford, Kentucky, was killed instantly in the accident at 1:25 a.m. His mother, Doris, 33, died later at 5:55 a.m. at Methodist South Hospital, officers said. Mother and child were struck by a car, and I'm not going to put all the names out there. That's why I'm using first names only, so I won't put the name of the person who was driving the car. So Officer Parks said of the Traffic Investigation Division, who investigated the accident at the scene, said there were no indications of improper driving. Parks said they had received conflicting statements from the witnesses as to what happened in the accident, which occurred on Elvis Presley Boulevard near Dolan. One version said mother and child were walking across the street together. A second said the mother was carrying the child. And the third, that the child ran into the street and the mother chased after it, and both were hit, Parks said. The tragedy was compounded by the fact that Father Harold, 35, who was with the family when the accident took place, is seriously disabled from injuries he himself received in an accident 8 years ago, police said. Lieutenant Purdy of the Traffic Investigation Squad said the investigation indicated the mother and 3 children parked across the street and crossed over to look at the decorative gate to the Presley home. 2 of the children, older boys age 11 and 13, were still at the gate, but the mother and child were headed back toward the parked car when struck, said the police. So that article of a very tragic event on Elvis Presley Boulevard in July of 1974 was the starting point of this story, which again is in the book, and the connection that I formed with Dottie. So I hope you'll listen ahead to our conversation, which again, the friendship has been really inspiring and meaningful to me. Really interesting to find out more of what happened on that day with the Presleys and the people who worked for Elvis and people at Graceland, and in the aftermath of the event as well. And stay tuned at the end. There will be a couple photos shared as well. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and we will talk again soon. Thank you for watching. So today I'd like to welcome Dottie, and we're going to tell an incredible story of Elvis's generosity, one that I think really illustrates his intentions in a way that others maybe haven't before, and really also illustrates his intentions with the people around him as well, and how the people around him often had to follow through with those intentions. And I'll just give a little brief synopsis of your story, and then we'll maybe talk about your childhood life, before you went to Texas, and then get into the experience that correlates to Elvis, and then talk a little bit about our connection afterwards. Okay. So In writing Destined to Give and researching, I found an article about Dottie's family, and her mother and her little brother tragically passed on July 25th, 1974, when they were hit by a car on Elvis Presley Boulevard. So we'll get into the details of all of that. So I found that article, and I wasn't sure I was going to write this book, which I've talked about before. And for some reason, that article just stuck out. And there were several people I really wanted to reach out to, but you were certainly at the top of the list. I just thought, I was nervous about reaching out to you, as we've talked about, because it's such a tragic event. Yes. And not knowing where you are or were at with that. But I just felt like I had to know what Elvis did or didn't do in response to that. And I just felt like there had to be a story attached that was not only important for, again, like the intention of Elvis Presley and how he lived and how he took care of people, but also what happened, what the experience was with your family. Because yes, Elvis is the famous person in this story, but you and your family, are very real human people who had a very tragic experience. And Elvis Presley was a part of that. And we've talked about how that thread is kind of carried through all these decades.
Every day,
right? Every day. Because he's everywhere. He's everywhere.
Well, every time I think of my mom, I would think of him, because
I
just do. I mean, that's how it was.
Yeah. So that's kind of just the overall synopsis. And then, once I did reach out and we connected, it ended up being something I think that was really important and valuable to both of us, which we'll talk about at the end. But why don't we kind of tell your story and see where that goes? So you were living in Kentucky with your family, your mom, your dad, and 3 brothers, right?
Yes, that's right.
And your dad had been in a car accident at one point.
Yeah, I was in the 3rd grade when he was in an accident, and he was thrown out of the car 70 or 90 feet. I really can't remember. I want to say 90, but I do have one article that says 70, and I can't find my other one. Anyway, regardless, he was thrown out of a car, through a windshield of a Volkswagen, landed on his head, and he was in a coma for 16 weeks, and we didn't think Dad was going to make it, but he did, and he had permanent brain damage after that. So, he was there, and it changed him where he got quick-tempered, and he never went back to work after that. But he was there, he was still Dad, but he was just different.
Different.
Yes.
Was he able to do things? I assume he probably couldn't drive or things like that, maybe?
He drove. I don't think he ever had his license after that. I don't think he ever renewed his license, but he worked on my grandfather's farm, because after the accident, Dad and my 2 brothers went to live with my mom's parents. So he stayed on the farm always and helped around there. And he did a lot of other, like, handyman type jobs, I guess, for his family, his side of the family. And then in the end, he passed in Georgia. He had went to live with one of my brothers in Kentucky that lived adjacent to the farm. And then he moved off of that farm, or moved out from that brother and moved in with my other brother in Georgia, who worked for Delta. And that's where he ended up passing.
So that was already in a coma for 16 weeks. That's an experience for your family that's very life-changing, obviously, especially for your mom.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The burden of responsibility and care, and the thought of the family, and I'm sure she became the head of the family at that point.
Oh, she did. Yes.
Yeah. So then you're 14 and you moved to Texas.
Yes, I fell in love a little too young. I don't know what got into me, but that's what happened.
Yep. It was a different time, right?
Yeah, it was, but it should have been that different. But it happened. Me and my boyfriend just talked about it. He was graduating, and he said, let's move to Texas, because his uncle owned a bunch of restaurants. He goes, we'll go down there and work with him. And I thought, well, that sounds fun. And I just had the, itch to get out to the big city living.
Sure.
I was ready to get out of the country, because my cousins always came down from Ohio, and I don't know, I thought they were city girls, and I just wanted to be like them. So, you're young and you're dumb. Anyway, we did elope, and And he made me get out and walk across the state line so my mother could not have him prosecuted for kidnapping. So I had to voluntarily walk across
Wow.
the line. He made sure of that.
Uh-huh.
And then I had to get to Texas. As soon as I got there, we went to his uncle's house, and they said, you need to call your mom. But she has been trying to call you. And I did not want to make that phone call. But I did. And Mom was pretty upset, of course. And, she calmed down once she found that I was okay and I was in love. And she wrote me several letters, which I did share one with you.
Yeah, it was very touching. Very touching. You could tell you were close. And I know you're the oldest of all the kids, right? So
Yes.
you could tell from the letter that it was a personal loss for her a little bit, to not have you close, I think, to confide in and share in all the responsibility.
Mm-hmm. And I was very close to my grandma too, so I know I broke both their hearts. And that was part of my problem, carrying all that guilt after, the accident happened. But so Mom came to see me. She wanted to give me a shower, but she said she preferred that I was there for the shower. So she collected a bunch of stuff from the family, and she went out and bought me a bunch of stuff, and she brought them down to Texas and come to make sure I was okay, living properly and everything was good, and make sure David was taking care of me. That was the first husband, and he was. And she left feeling good about that.
And that's incredible, right? I mean, I think it's important to recognize that, especially in 1974. How many parents would have just said, "You're on your own. I don't agree with this decision," right?
Yes.
But she wanted to keep you close. She wanted to make sure you were okay. She drives the whole family to Texas to make sure you're okay and that everything's settled. And that's incredible.
Yes, that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. And then we said our goodbyes, and they were tearful. I was just really upset to say bye to Mom, because now she knew, and it was all out there, and all the family knew, and and she was leaving me. But we did our little crying and our goodbyes, and then she called me that night to say that she was getting ready to see Elvis. And she was all excited. She would just get very excited about things. Kind of, I have that little personality too. And she wanted to get the camera, and she said she's going to go back, and he was coming down she said they were up there having cocktails, and he was going to come down to sign autographs.
So she was driving back with your dad and your three brothers from Texas back to Kentucky. Yes. They stopped in Memphis. Were they planning to spend the night there, or were they just stopping to see Graceland?
I think they were just stopping. According to my brothers.
She's a lifelong fan, right? I mean, she just loves Elvis. She wants to see Graceland. So that's why they stop.
Yes.
And then your dad waits in the car, and she takes your three brothers, who I believe at that time were 13, 11, and 2. Darren was 2. And go over to the gates, and she talks to someone who says that Elvis is going to be coming down, right?
Yes. I assume she talked to someone because she knew that he was coming down. And the brother said that she was talking to one of the guards.
Okay. So she called you from a payphone? Is that what happened?
Yeah, she called me from a payphone when she crossed the road, and super excited about it. Yeah, and that was our last conversation. I mean, it was about Elvis. So you can't help but to think about, every day you think about Mom, you think about, the accident, because it just all was there.
Right. So you're in Texas. You're a long ways away from, where all of this tragically happens, which had to be so difficult too, to get that phone call. But I'll back up just a minute. Your mom and brothers go over to the gate. Someone says Elvis is coming down shortly. So she leaves your 2 older brothers at the gate, takes the 2-year-old back across the street to get her camera out of the car because she wants to meet Elvis and have a photo of that, right?
Right.
And then calls you, tells you the exciting news, and then is going to cross back over Elvis Presley Boulevard with 2-year-old Darren and her camera. And that's when she was tragically hit by a car, by a driver, a young woman driving a car.
Yeah.
It was 1:00 in the morning because she was traveling back from Texas. So it was very dark, all of that. So then your brothers are left at the gate by themselves, and I can't imagine. And I know we've talked just briefly about that, that it's still not really, it'll never be clear in their memory what happened at that point.
Yeah.
Because it was just so
there was
overwhelming.
So much chaos, when it happened, everybody was running, and they didn't remember, who took them where. They just knew they were shuffled into the guard shack, and quickly, because they didn't want them to see mom. And they remembered, the sound of the accident, but they didn't. Gibby said he remembered, Gibby's my brother, my oldest brother. He said he remembered seeing dad leaning over mom, and that's all he can remember about seeing mom there during the accident. Because they thankfully they did shuffle them into that guard shack, and they stood in the doorway where they couldn't get back out. So I don't know who did that or what, but that was a good thing.
And when we first connected, that was kind of the basic information that we had between us, because from the article, it was very basic. It was very just detailed of this is what happened and this is what time, and then they passed, and a family from Kentucky, etc. So then once we talked briefly, and then I started to do a little more research, we found a clip in All the King's Men of Sonny West giving details and kind of filling in that gap for you and your brothers, I'm sure.
Yes. Yeah. As hard as it was, it wasn't hard to listen to it at first, but it wasn't hard to start to listen to it, I should say. But then hearing those words, it just kind of really hit us. But it was, in a weird way, it was so good to listen to, because it just gave us more. I wasn't there, so I needed to hear that. And it happened. Helped me put it all into perspective, because then I started thinking, well, Sonny West said he was the first one to get to mom. And, she was crossing the road. So I'm certain that she knew Elvis was coming down. And when he flipped his lights on in the car, I'm sure she thought that was Elvis driving down. So, of course, she's hustling across the road and probably not paying attention, because mom was so adamant about us when we crossed the road. We thought that was weird, that would be the way she would get killed, because she drilled that into our heads when we were little. Always look both ways. She was just weird about that. And then that happened. That's so strange. But yeah, I'm sure she thought that was Elvis, and she just hustled across the street.
Yeah, she was always so concerned about your safety. Yeah.
Yeah, she was.
So when I found that clip, I had to sit with it for a minute too, in the same way that it took me a minute to feel comfortable reaching out to your family, not knowing, how things had played out, where the grief journey was. It's a tragic situation.
We just never really talked about it.
I sat with that for such a long time, and now I'm just so grateful, as you know, that I did reach out. And then when I saw that clip with Sonny West, again, because he gives detail about what your brother looked like, when he walked up to him, and your mom, and I just thought, I don't know if I share this, because it is graphic. It's only like 90 seconds, but there's 20 good seconds of graphic information about the accident. And so I was kind of hesitant too. And then when I sent it to you, I said all of that up front, like, you might want to watch this, but there are details that, you can start at 20 seconds in if this isn't what you want to hear.
I couldn't. I wanted to see it all. And then he said that was the short version. I was like, oh, where's the long version then? And I wish I'd reached out earlier, but we just didn't. Nobody talked about it after the accident. We just didn't.
Well, and who knew, like, how would you know who to reach out to, or how to get in touch with them, or or any of that? And it's Elvis Presley, so that makes it and it's in the newspaper, so that makes it a public situation, but it's just incredibly personal for you, and you don't really think of it outside of that, especially when it happens. I would imagine.
Not at all. Never.
So
when you reached out to me, the first thing I thought of is, like, only thing I wanted to know from you on the onset of this was, what did you find? What article? Because I just wanted that. I just needed more, anything I could find, because I've done genealogy for years, and any little thing, any little picture you've never seen, that's all I was wanting.
Yeah. And then when you responded with, the photo of you and your brothers at the water there in Texas, it's the last photo of all four of you together. It was like, it took what started as an article for me. And I knew it was a very human story, don't get me wrong. But when you sent me that photo, and you don't know how much your life is going to change in the day ahead.
No, and I always cherished that one, because that was all of us looking at mom. Now, she loved taking pictures too. That was another one of her little things. So that was.
So you were so kind to share the photo, and the visuals, because it made it even more real for me. And then I wanted to find out more for you. And I wish we could have started sooner. I wish we could have started sooner when Sonny was alive, and, anyone else would know this story. So
I didn't even know all these people were gone. I was like, I got to talk to this person. And every time I think of somebody and try to look them up, they're not there. Everybody's passed.
Yeah. So after the tragic accident, the boys are in the guard shack. I'm sure does your dad go to the hospital with your mom, or does he end up with the boys
He
somehow?
stayed with the boys.
Because somehow everyone gets to the hospital eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think it might have been Sonny, because I know Sonny's the one that put him up in the hotel. So it could have been him. The brothers don't remember. But when I picked them up that night, everything was about Sonny, Elvis's bodyguard, that they were telling, or not that night, but that morning. I picked my littlest brother up. The other one stayed with my dad. But they were saying that Sonny had put them in the hotel and told them, to eat, to get whatever they needed, and don't worry about anything, that Elvis was going to take care of it all.
So did you drive all night from Texas, or how did you get to Memphis?
Yes, I did, because I was going to get to the hospital, because the news was, that Mom was still alive. So that's what I was thinking. And we were talking on the way to the hospital thinking, well, this is going to change Mom, because she was so close to Darren, and he was just a cute little guy. And, we all just doted on him being the little baby, and we're all, not babies anymore, but we just everybody doted on him. And then I had to get there and, hear that news, which I was not prepared for. So, and I didn't understand when they said she'd expired, because I'm young, and I thought expired. And then they asked me if I needed to talk to a priest, and then I got it. And then I kind of freaked out.
Wow. And was your dad able to process all of this?
Yeah, he did. I mean, I don't know, how much. We just didn't really talk a lot about it. Even with my grandma, we didn't talk a lot about it. We just didn't talk. Everybody kind of shut down.
Yeah.
I had to walk in that night, and I think I told you, seeing my grandmother and all her sisters, and they were just standing there consoling her, and she was crying, and I hated going in the house. That was so bad, because I had guilt, because I thought if I'd never moved to Texas, if I never eloped, this would not have happened. And we all did.
And you're only 14. Like, how do you begin to process? I don't know how you begin or end that process when you're so young. And of course you're going to feel like it's your fault, even though it was not.
Yeah.
Especially at 14, there's no way you could remove yourself from that, I wouldn't think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you couldn't.
Because you haven't lived yet. You don't know that things happen. You don't understand some of the randomness of life at times,
Right.
So I'm sure that was so internalized for you, and then no one would talk to you about it. So that must have felt even heavier.
Yeah, it was. I read some of my little school papers that I wrote, and it's always about that. And I thought, oh, wow, I needed some kind of therapy or something.
So we found out, through what all the King's Men, and then we saw a couple things in some books and whatnot, that Elvis was notified of what happened to your mom and your brother. And he's the one who told Sonny, you put them up at the hotel, you get them food. If we need to I think he's talking about you, like if we need to get her here to help, because, Sonny mentions that in the video, then let's make that happen. And then whatever they need to eat, and you make sure we pay for everything. So what did it mean to you to hear that Elvis wanted to help in that way?
I was glad to know that somebody actually cared, because Mom, loved him so much that she was there, and it was very good to hear that. Yeah, just to know he actually cared. He didn't just brush it off and like, oh, well, she shouldn't have been out there in the middle of the night.
Right.
He actually cared. So, yeah.
Well, and we talked briefly kind of about the correlation between you and Elvis, which I hadn't thought about really until you said, that both of you lost your mothers young and unexpectedly. But also, you said you carried that guilt of, if it wasn't for me, Mom wouldn't have been there. Well, I bet you anything, after what I've studied and learned, that Elvis thought if it wasn't for me, they wouldn't have been there. And then they'd still have their mom and their brother,
Yeah.
I bet you Elvis felt that too. Because I think he felt that a lot, when tragedy happened around him, and it happened at times. And we know that after your mom's accident, that little pull off in front of Graceland was added. He wanted it to be safer for the fans on Graceland.
Yes.
And he gave an easement of land to the city of Memphis to make it safer. And then that came out of your mom's accident.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad something good came out of it.
Yeah, but I'm just saying he was so conscious of that, like he understood.
Right. Yes, he did.
She was there to see him too,
Yeah, and I've never really liked him all these years, but I've been reading a little bit of him now, thanks to you and your books. I started with those, and then I started reading other things, and just he was a very sensitive person, and I'm sure I'm sure this weighed on him heavily.
I think so.
So,
I think so, because he understood the power he had, I think, with people and the magnetism. And he
yeah.
never wanted to take advantage of that with the things that he says and, the way that he was in public, especially. And he would go down to the gates all the time to talk to fans because he valued that effort that they put in. He
Mhm.
always said, they put the shirt on my back, they can have it. He
Right.
knew that
Yes.
the fans put him and his family in that house on the hill and gave them a life that they never thought they'd have living in such poverty in Tupelo. But he also knew it came with a price too and a heavy responsibility. So
Mhm. Yeah.
so he puts you up in the hotel, he pays for all of that, and then he even sent flowers, right?
Right.
To the funeral.
Yes. Yes, but we never did get the card. We were told that he had sent flowers. My grandmother, I say we were told, my grandmother knew, and she had told me, but the card just disappeared somewhere. I don't know what happened to that. And I had all the stuff, and I have looked through it all since we talked. I pulled out all the funeral stuff, and I looked at all the people that signed the books, trying to see, if I recognized a name. And I had all the floral cards, and I looked through them just to be sure. But
Right.
yeah,
Someone intentionally took that, and
I'm
that's
sure.
sad, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's sad because it probably ended up in someone's stuff, and after a certain
probably.
amount of time didn't mean anything to them when it meant the world to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's incredible. So that was 1974, almost 52 years ago.
I know.
And we've talked quite a bit about how, I don't know if hate is the right word, but
It's a good word.
Yeah, okay. But you hated Elvis for a long time because he is the reason your mom is there, and then he's that's why you lose your mom at such a young age, and you still need your mom at 14, and you always do, right?
And I needed to blame somebody besides myself, and it was Elvis.
And
that just took some of the
and that
guilt
too,
from
right?
me. Yeah.
Yeah, because no one's talking about it with you. Everybody's silent about it, so that makes it feel even heavier to you as a young girl.
Right.
I'm sure.
Yes.
And then you project that onto Elvis. Like, well, it's not because I was in Texas; it's because she had to stop and see him.
Right.
And I mean, because you're 14, that makes sense, right?
I just did not care for him at all. And then I married, my husband. We've been married for 46 years in December of this year, and he loved Elvis. And he said, out of respect for me, he has never talked about Elvis. And so we're just enjoying Elvis now. We're enjoying, we went to see Epic 4 times. We enjoyed it that much.
So he was always a fan, and he just kind of set it aside because he knew.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, it gives a whole new meaning to you. Got to face the music because, boy, we have been facing it now. Like, I listen to the music. I think he's just incredible. I love his voice. I don't think there's another voice like that.
I agree. To me, him and Sinatra are just so uniquely talented, but also universal, and like nothing ever comes close. It's just a different level of talent, and certainly with Elvis, and then the cultural impact he had on the world that is still ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're enjoying it together.
Yes, we are. It's just, and I'm such at peace now because I had boxed up all these feelings along with all these documents that I shared with you, photos. I mean, I went through all of my mom's photos. I created a photo album just of her. Oh my gosh, I've just been having so much fun looking and reading, and I feel at peace now. And I don't know what happened, but you made me open that box and face this all. And it gave me a sense of peace. I just feel.
I'm sure over the last 5 decades, you matured and you understood it wasn't your fault. I'm sure you came to terms with that before this.
Yes.
But maybe a little bit of that was still wrapped up in hating Elvis, right? So in being able to embrace Elvis again, you kind of can fully forgive whatever blame you had on yourself. Maybe, I don't know, but
I don't know either. But I just feel at peace with everything.
I'm so glad.
Me too. It's been a journey.
I have an odd question, but I know Christmas is always difficult without family, and that's what I was struck with today. And I thought it's a weird question, but you can't go through Christmas without hearing an Elvis song. So when you're without your mom, all those Christmases, you must hear Blue Christmas, or, um, one of those, you just hear Elvis on the radio all the time at Christmas time. Were there those moments at the holidays when you would hear Elvis and it would just kind of bring it all back?
Well, I try to spend most of my holidays, many as I could, I should say, with my grandmother until she passed. So,
Okay.
yeah, going back and forth. I passed Memphis so many times, and never once did I want to stop, except for one time my daughter made me stop so we could go there. She wanted to see the gates, and I didn't really want to, but I did because she wanted to.
Yeah.
But yeah, hearing the music, I mean, I miss Mom anyway, whether there was music or not. You just
Right.
do.
Yeah. I was just wondering if it compounded it,
Yeah. I wouldn't say that. No, because I probably heard it and didn't really even realize what I was hearing, because I really wasn't into Elvis.
Right, because you were just avoiding the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
But I did have an Elvis Christmas album that I did, save. I've got some Elvis things that I pulled that out to play at Christmas, but I don't know. I don't think I ever did, for some reason, probably that reason.
Maybe. How about your brothers? How were they? How did they feel about Elvis, or was it just something that they avoided because even though they can't remember all of it because they were in shock, they experienced the warmth and the kindness of everyone there, at Graceland that day?
My one brother I haven't really talked to about what he thinks of Elvis. I know the other one, thought Elvis was cool and he wanted to be kind of like him back in the day. And then he's the one that has went through Graceland now. So
okay.
I think
and then you're going in June, right?
I'm going in June for my little retirement getaway. Girls road trip.
I'm anxious to hear about all of that. And I can't wait. So happy for you because it's the complex, the hotel, everything has just been changed so much, especially in the last many years. But it's quite it's a different experience.
That big hotel wasn't there when I was there at that only time I was there. But now I'm looking forward to it.
It's just such a
pilgrimage to bring it all full circle and
and
it's flowers on the curb and move on.
It's just such an interesting thought, for you to put flowers on the curb like that, and you're going to a place where millions of people go because of Elvis to see the gates, and it just has this whole other meaning for you. That's so personal.
That's true. Yeah,
so personal. Well, when I reached out, as I've said before, I wasn't sure I was going to write the book. And I've told you, I shared with you a couple days ago, my acknowledgments section, where I thanked you in particular, because as much as you needed to hear to share your mom in this way, as you've said that it was healing for you in a different kind of way. Yes. I just needed it too. So I just feel like we were so destined to connect. And even in my hesitation to reach out, I'm so glad I did. I just thought I would read this paragraph real quick about what it meant to me. Okay.
Okay.
So in the paragraph before, I just explained the accident and how it was difficult for me to reach out. And then I said, and then I unexpectedly found myself in consistent communication with Dottie. Prior to the accident that claimed her mother and brother, she had eloped and moved to Texas. Her family was on the way home from visiting when the accident happened. She shared with me such incredible memories and documentation. She also shared her family's processing of unimaginable grief, both then and now. Dottie even told me about how she still has her mother's blood-stained earrings from that day. And more than anything or anyone else, Dottie is why I wrote this book.
Oh, thank you so much.
She hated Elvis for years after what happened. Her mother would not have been there if she had not loved Elvis so much. And in our conversation, she told me she hadn't realized she needed the opportunity to talk about all of it. Dottie was afraid she was forgetting her mother after over 50 years, and telling me about her brought her back in some way. She said that learning how much Elvis did care on that tragic night was incredibly healing for her. It was healing for both of us. Dottie gave me purpose, and she gave Destin to give intention. Elvis's giving nature alone is only half the story. It is equally as much about those who received in such pure moments of generosity and compassion. Those stories must be remembered along with the very real people who were impacted. Thank you, Dottie.
Oh, thank you, Sally. Wow.
Thank you, because it's not about it is about Elvis, right? And his generosity and what he did with his fame and how he just kept giving to people to almost a detriment where he couldn't take care of himself, in those last many years because he gave so much to so many people. But the real story is who was on the receiving end. And for so many of these stories, they're lost to time because they weren't publicized because Elvis didn't want them publicized. Or, there's a lot of grandiose stories out there that aren't true. So you can't find the people that actually commit to the other side of where that intention landed. So to have you share your story and verify that intention and being on the receiving end of that intention was so important for the work I'm doing. So I just wanted to thank you for that tremendously because I know this is a hard story to share.
Yeah, you're welcome because it opened me up and it just gave me the peace I needed. I mean, it just, I don't know, it was meant to be.
Yeah.
It's Elvis magic or whatever they call that.
Well, see, you're learning a lot because that's exactly what they call it. That's exactly what they call it. And it is very real. I have experienced it before with just the way he still brings people together around the world in magical ways. And this was certainly one of those. So although it's a tragic story, what happened to your mom and your brother and your family and how it changed the trajectory of all of your lives. All these years later, there's some good in it. So
thank you. Yes.
So thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for reaching out to us because you reached out to my brother and he reached out. He said, I don't know. It could be some scammer. We don't know. So we had to check
it out. It's a wise man.
Anyway.
Very true. Well, I can't wait to hear how Graceland goes and to get some pictures from your trip. And I hope that trip is what you need too.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.